But moving on, 7 new coaches in the NFL. Okay, 7 guys got their pink slip. I think it was, I believe, 3 during the season and 4 after the season. I could be wrong on those numbers, but I know I'm right with 7 new hires in the NFL. Pat, what do you got on that?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about, I think it was our first show, actually, we talked about the lack of minority coaches in the NFL. And we saw one minority coach who I think a lot of people just thought was a slam dunk. I think Robert Saleh, the defensive coordinator out of the 49ers, he is now the head coach of the Jets. And I know as a Patriots fan, I was like, oh, crap, because I think he's going to do really well with the Jets. I think he's really going to stabilize that organization. You saw with the 49ers this year, and this is a credit to Saleh and also the head coach Shanahan, with all the injuries that they had on both the offensive and defensive side of the ball. They played in probably the toughest division in the NFL, and they still played their rear ends off every single week. I mean, they came into actually the Patriots went out to San Francisco, I believe, this year, if I'm remembering correctly. But the 49ers steamrolled the Pats this year. And I know the Patriots weren't, their normal selves this season, but they had no chance in that game. And the 49ers had a ton of injuries. So they've been well coached all year, especially their defense. And now that defensive coordinator is going to the Jets. I think it's a great hire for them. Finally, the Jets do something well and hire a really good coach. But you saw, Jacksonville, I think, is unique because they hired Urban Meyer. He clearly has a fan base, if you would say, down in the Gainesville, kind of that area of Florida that obviously translates to Jacksonville. So I think I understand why they hired him for that. Plus, you hear guys all the time talking about coaches that come into these teams need to know how to establish a program, to run a program. And clearly Meyer knows how to do that. Some of the other coaches, Brandon Staley, the Rams defensive coordinator, he's now with the Chargers. Another young coordinator that, these seem to be hit or miss. Some guys have done really well, some guys not so well because of just their lack of inexperience. So it's going to be interesting to see how some of these guys do. Arthur Smith, the offensive coordinator out of the Titans, he's going to be the head coach of the Falcons. So we'll see how he does as well. That Titans offense has been very good. You see the kind of changes they made as soon as Tannehill became quarterback last year, and also they can run the ball with the beast, Derrick Henry. But I think Eric Bieniemy is probably going to be a huge topic for the next few weeks. We'll see what happens. It looks like he's going to get shut out again. I'm actually surprised. I'm sure this is something you want to talk about, Brandon, too. But I know, lately a lot of people have been talking about sort of Bieniemy's past and his troubles in the past, especially when he was at Colorado, both as a player and as a coach. And folks are saying that that's one of the reasons why he's not getting a head coaching job. And for that, I sort of understand. I mean, but I think it's a debatable topic.
Yeah, I hope that's not the case because, those things were over 30 years ago for that man. So I hope that he's not still being judged for that and it's holding him back because clearly he's a great NFL coach. He's been great at Kansas City. Arguably deserves a lot of credit for where Kansas City is right now and where they have Mahomes playing at such a high level. So I think it's really – that's going to be a tough topic. I think a lot of people are going to be questioning why Bieniemy hasn't really already been named as a head coach because he's just as qualified, if not more qualified, than some of the guys that you just named. I think the only two that this comes back to bite me, but the last two, the Arthur Smith to the Falcons, I think – here's what I say. I think the Falcons are still going to suck. And I don't think Arthur Smith's going to change that, okay? I think they need a better coach than that. Brandon Staley, I think he sniffed a few butts to get where he is, honestly, in the NFL. He got hired as a positional coach in 2017 with the Chicago Bears. Then he gets bumped up 2 years later to being a coordinator. Now here we are. He's only been in the NFL as a coach for 4 years, and now he's getting to be a head coach? Honestly, I just don't agree with that. And here's another thing. I get it. He was the defensive coordinator at the Rams. The Rams had the #1 defense. I think I could call the defense for the Los Angeles Rams. I think, Pat, you could call the defense for the Los Angeles Rams, and they were still going to be #1. Give me Aaron Donald. Give me Jalen Ramsey. Give me the players that they had around him this year. That defense was unstoppable. Anybody could have called the defense. I think it's one of these things where they're giving Sean McVay a little bit too much credit. I know they've hit on people off of his staff in the past, like Zach Taylor in Cincinnati. He's doing really well. Matt LaFleur with this Green Bay team off of Sean McVay's staff. I think they're trying to go too deep into the well. I don't think they're going to find anything with Brandon Staley. I think the Chargers are going to still suck on just because he's not good enough as a coach. He's a defensive-minded coach coming in to an offensive-minded team with a young quarterback that needs somebody to help him develop, and I don't think Brandon Staley is going to be able to do that. I think Eric Bieniemy makes sense, honestly, for the Chargers to bring him in as an offensive coordinator, as an offensive-minded person, somebody that can develop a young quarterback. He's proven it already with Patrick Mahomes, but I don't think you're going to see that happen, honestly. I don't think you're going to see that happen, obviously, because you got Brandon Staley in there. So it's just something that I think was going to be the wrong fit for the team. It's not going to work out. I think what you're hearing still is Eric Bieniemy might possibly go to the Houston Texans as a head coach. They're still looking to fill their position. We're going to talk about that coming up. And honestly, is that a position that's worth taking if Deshaun Watson's still going to be around? I know one of the gripes that Deshaun Watson has is that he wanted to see Eric Bieniemy brought in for an interview. The Texans finally did that. They did bring him in for an interview. Are they going to go ahead and pull the trigger and hire him? So it's really questionable. But as far as minority coaches, sure, you got Robert Saleh, and he's definitely a minority coach, the first head coach that's a Muslim in the NFL. And I think I have to cheer the Jets organization for doing that. And I think he deserves it. I mean, like you said, he had that 49ers defense playing at a high level. I mean, he didn't have the players like the Rams do, and he's had that team playing great out there in San Francisco. I think he's going to be a great addition to the Jets. I think New England does have to, unfortunately, watch out for that because now we have to face them twice in the division. But I think that was a great hire. Another great hire was Jacksonville, bringing back Urban Meyer. Like you said, bringing back the excitement of Urban Meyer back to Florida. I'm a fan. I'm looking forward to what he can bring back in football. But honestly, if we're talking about questionable past, he had a kind of a questionable past at Ohio State, right? Just got hired as the head coach at Jacksonville. So I just really feel like Eric Bieniemy, it's time. It's time for this man to get a head coaching job. I'm just not sure if you're going to see it happen.
Yeah, I think you're right about what you were talking about before, too, where now it seems like the Sean McVay tree is where all the coaches are being plucked. And that's not always, I mean, the Bill Belichick tree has been plucked a lot, and that hasn't really worked out well for a lot of the guys that have become head coaches. You might even see it again now with Bill O'Brien, which I think he's a better coach than a GM. I think Bill O'Brien, the GM, hurt Bill O'Brien, the coach. But you can see, we're going to talk about in a second why there was more to that than just Bill O'Brien. But I guess I don't understand it with Bieniemy. I know there's some thoughts about back in the early 2000s, he was the running backs coach at Colorado, and Colorado had a big recruiting scandal when it came to having strippers and alcohol and maybe more to recruit kids, and maybe the strippers were doing more than stripping. You know, who the heck knows what happened there. I think Gary Barnett was the head coach at that time. I know he got suspended, I think, for the year or something like that. But there was a big scandal there at that time, and there's rumors that he was part of it. I don't think there's anything saying he definitely was involved in that. But I think the biggest thing with Bieniemy, if you are looking at his past, is he's had a few instances. There's not just one particular thing that's really hurt him. It's been a few different things that, even though they were 20 years ago, they still happened over a period of time. So I think that's what teams are looking at, but no coach is completely flawless. You mentioned Urban Meyer. He had an assistant coach back at Ohio State with domestic abuse problems, and they never fired him. And he certainly had players at Florida, which we all know too well here in New England, that were some issues they've had in the past. So I think teams got to kind of look past that and look at him over the last 5 or 6 years, however long he's been the OC at Kansas City, and really see what he's done during both on and off the field.